The soft glow of my desk lamp cast long shadows across the cluttered surfaces of my small laboratory. It was a space that had become more familiar to me than my own bedroom over the past few years. The walls were lined with shelves overflowing with dog-eared notebooks, each filled to the brim with scribbled calculations and half-formed ideas. Scattered across every available surface were beakers, test tubes, and various pieces of equipment I'd cobbled together from spare parts and sheer determination. I leaned back in my worn office chair, rubbing my tired eyes. The digital clock on my desk blinked 3:47 a.m., a time that had become all too common in my relentless pursuit of scientific breakthrough. I'd lost count of how many nights I'd spent like this, hunched over my workbench, my mind racing with theories and possibilities. My name is Alex Chin, and for as long as I can remember, I've been driven by an insatiable curiosity about how the world works. Growing up in the bustling city of San Francisco, I was always the kid who took apart every gadget I could get my hands on, much to my parents' chagrin. That curiosity led me to pursue a degree in bioengineering at Stanford, where I first stumbled upon the idea that would consume my life for the next 5 years. It started as a simple question: what if we could harness the body's own healing mechanisms to fight diseases more effectively? The concept wasn't new, but as I delved deeper into my research, I began to see connections that others had missed. I became convinced that with the right approach, we could develop a revolutionary treatment that would change the face of medicine. After graduation, while my classmates were off securing cushy jobs at big pharma companies or pursuing further degrees, I made the decision that would shape the course of my life. I converted the garage of my small rental house into a makeshift lab and threw myself into my work with a fervor that bordered on obsession. The early days were tough. I lived on a shoestring budget, scraping together funds from part-time tutoring gigs and the occasional consulting work. Every spare penny went into my research. I became a regular at surplus stores and online auctions, slowly piecing together the equipment I needed. My social life dwindled to almost nothing, my friends' invitations becoming less and less frequent as I turned them down time and time again. But I didn't care. With every experiment, every late-night brainstorming session, I felt like I was getting closer to something big. There were setbacks, of course. Countless failed trials, dead ends that left me frustrated and questioning my choices. I still remember the day my main centrifuge broke down, a crucial piece of equipment that I couldn't afford to replace. I spent 3 sleepless nights repairing it myself, my hands shaking with caffeine and determination. Through it all, my family remained a source of both support and tension. My mom, bless her heart, never stopped worrying about me. She'd show up unannounced with homemade dumplings, clucking her tongue at the state of my lab and reminding me that it wasn't too late to get a real job. My dad, ever the practical one, alternated between pride in my dedication and concern about my financial stability. And then there was my half-sister Lily. 5 years younger than me, she was the golden child of the family. While I was the awkward science nerd, she was the social butterfly, effortlessly charming everyone she met. Our relationship was complicated. I loved her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she had it easy, that things just fell into her lap while I had to fight for every inch of progress. But none of that mattered in the moment of breakthrough. It happened on a chilly Tuesday morning in October. I'd been up all night, running a series of tests that I'd been planning for weeks. As the first rays of sunlight began to creep through the dusty windows of my lab, I stared at the results on my computer screen, my heart pounding in my chest. The data was clear. The nanoparticles I'd engineered were successfully targeting and eliminating cancer cells in the tissue samples, leaving healthy cells untouched. It was the moment I'd been working towards for years, the culmination of countless sleepless nights and sacrificed weekends. I sat there, stunned, as the reality of what I'd achieved slowly sank in. My hands were shaking as I double-checked the results, triple-checked them, hardly daring to believe what I was seeing. But with each verification, the truth became undeniable. I had done it. I had created something that could revolutionize cancer treatment. The euphoria hit me like a tidal wave. I let out a whoop of joy, spinning around in my chair, laughing and crying at the same time. I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, to call everyone I knew and tell them the news. But as the initial surge of emotion subsided, a calm certainty settled over me. I knew that this was just the beginning. With a deep breath, I turned back to my computer and began the painstaking process of documenting every detail of my work. I recorded data, prepared intricate schematics, and started researching the patent process. The significance of my discovery was clear. This wasn't just a potential million-dollar idea, it was an innovation that could save countless lives. As I worked, my mind raced with possibilities. I imagined cancer patients being treated without the devastating side effects of chemotherapy, of families spared the heartache of losing loved ones to this terrible disease. I thought about the impact this could have on the medical field, on research, on our understanding of the human body's capacity to heal itself. But with those exciting thoughts came a sobering realization of the challenges ahead. I knew that bringing this discovery to the world wouldn't be easy. There would be years of clinical trials, regulatory hurdles, and the daunting task of securing funding to take my research to the next level. And then there was the issue of protecting my work. The biotech industry was fiercely competitive, and I knew that there were people out there who wouldn't hesitate to steal or discredit my research if given the chance. I made a mental note to look into additional security measures for my lab and to be cautious about who I shared my findings with. As the day wore on, I forced myself to take a break, stepping outside for the first time in what felt like days. The cool air hit my face, and I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The world around me seemed different somehow, as if the colors were a little brighter, the sounds a little clearer. I had taken the first step on a journey that would change my life forever. That night, as I finally allowed myself to rest, my dreams were filled with visions of the future. I saw myself presenting my findings to rooms full of impressed scientists, accepting awards, shaking hands with world leaders. But more than that, I saw the faces of people whose lives would be changed by my discovery. People who would get a second chance at life because of the work I'd done. As I drifted off to sleep, a small smile played on my lips. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever obstacles I might face, I knew that I was ready to face them. The breakthrough was just the beginning, and I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take me next. The day after my breakthrough, I woke up late, my body finally succumbing to the exhaustion of the past few weeks. As I stumbled into the kitchen to make some much-needed coffee, I noticed several missed calls from my mom. With a sigh, I dialed her number, bracing myself for the usual mix of concern and gentle nagging. "Alex, where have you been?" "I've been trying to reach you all morning." My mom's voice came through, a blend of relief and exasperation. "Sorry, Mom. I was up late working and overslept," I explained, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. I wasn't ready to share my discovery with anyone yet, not even her. You work too hard," she sighed. "Don't forget about the family dinner tonight. Your father's birthday, remember?" I groaned inwardly. In the whirlwind of my research, I had completely forgotten about the dinner. "Of course, Mom. I'll be there," I promised, already dreading the evening ahead. As I hung up, my mind wandered to thoughts of my family. Growing up in our modest home in the Sunset District of San Francisco, family dinners had once been a highlight of my week. My dad, Michael Chin, had immigrated from Hong Kong as a young man and worked his way up from a dishwasher to owning a successful chain of Chinese restaurants. He was a man of few words, but his expectations for his children were always clear: success, respect, and family loyalty. My relationship with him was complicated. I admired his work ethic and determination, traits I'd like to think I inherited. But there was always a distance between us, a gap I could never quite bridge. Maybe it was because I chose science over joining the family business, or maybe it was something deeper, something I could never quite put my finger on. And then there was Lily, my half-sister. The product of my father's second marriage after my mom passed away when I was 10, Lily was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, effortlessly charming, and beautiful, she seemed to win people over without even trying. At 23, she was already making waves in the local art scene with her vibrant paintings, a far cry from my world of microscopes and lab reports. As I got ready for the dinner, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment. Here I was, on the verge of a scientific breakthrough that could change the world, and I had to put on a smile and make small talk at a family gathering. Part of me wanted to shout my accomplishment from the rooftops, to finally show my father that my chosen path was worthwhile. But another part, the cautious scientist in me, knew that it was too soon, that I needed to protect my discovery until I could secure my claim to it. The sun was setting as I pulled up to my father's house in the Marina District, a testament to his success with its sweeping views of the Golden Gate Bridge. I took a deep breath, plastered on a smile, and rang the doorbell. "Alex." Lily's voice rang out as she opened the door, pulling me into a tight hug. "I was starting to think you weren't coming." I returned the hug, trying to ignore the familiar mix of affection and jealousy that always surfaced around her. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, following her into the house. The evening unfolded much as I expected. My stepmom, Susan, fussed over the food while my dad held court in the living room, regaling everyone with stories of his latest business ventures. Lily flitted about, keeping conversations flowing and making sure everyone's glasses were full. And me? I sat quietly, nodding along and trying not to let my mind wander back to my lab. It was during dessert that I first noticed something was off. My dad kept shooting glances at Lily, a mix of pride and something else I couldn't quite place. Lily, for her part, seemed unusually focused on her phone, typing furiously when she thought no one was looking. "So, Alex," my dad's voice cut through my observations. "How's your project going?" The way he said project made it sound like a child's science fair experiment rather than years of dedicated research. I straightened up, feeling a familiar defensiveness creeping in. "It's going well, actually. I've made some significant progress recently." "That's nice," he nodded, but his eyes had already drifted back to Lily. "Did you hear about your sister's latest accomplishment? Her painting was selected for a showcase at the De Young Museum. Isn't that wonderful?" "That's great, Lily," I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Congratulations." Lily beamed, but there was something off about her smile, a tightness around her eyes that I'd never noticed before. "Thanks, Alex. It's not really a big deal." "Not a big deal," my dad interrupted. "It's a huge opportunity. In fact, we've been talking about how to leverage this for something even bigger." "Lily, why don't you tell your brother about our plans?" Lily shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Dad, I don't think now is the time." But my father was on a roll. Lily's been offered a chance to study in Paris. A full year at one of the most prestigious art schools in the world. It's an incredible opportunity, but it's also quite expensive. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. I could see where this was going. "We've been looking into ways to fund it," my dad continued, his eyes now fixed on me. "I remember you mentioning some sort of trust fund from your mother's side of the family. I was thinking, since you're not using it for your education anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. The trust fund. My mom's last gift to me, meant to support my dreams and ambitions. And now my father wanted me to hand it over to Lily? "Dad," I started, my voice tight with suppressed anger. "That money is for my research. It's not just sitting there, I'm using it to fund my work." "Come on, Alex," Lily chimed in, her voice honey-sweet. "You know how much this means to me. And it's not like your experiments are going anywhere, right?" I stared at her, shocked by the dismissive tone in her voice. Was this the same sister who used to cheer me on, who would listen with rapt attention as I explained my latest theories? "My experiments are important," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "I'm on the verge of something big, something that could actually make a difference in the world." My father scoffed. "Alex, be realistic. You've been saying that for years. It's time to consider other options. A real job, perhaps. The restaurants could always use someone with your analytical skills." I felt like I was suffocating. The room seemed to close in around me as I realized the full extent of what was happening. This wasn't just about the money. This was about my father's lack of faith in me, about Lily's willingness to step on my dreams to further her own. It was about years of feeling second best, of having my passion dismissed as a hobby. "I need some air," I muttered, pushing back from the table and heading for the door. I could hear my stepmom calling after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't bear to be in that house for another minute. Outside, The cool night air hit my face, and I took deep, gulping breaths. My mind was racing. How long had they been planning this? How could Lily go along with it? And most painfully, how could my father have so little faith in me? As I stood there, trying to calm my racing thoughts, a chilling realization crept over me. If my father was willing to dismiss my work so easily, if Lily was comfortable belittling my research, what else might they be capable of? My breakthrough, my years of work, were they safe? I thought back to the times I'd shared bits of my research with my family, always in vague terms, but perhaps not vague enough. Had I said too much? Could they piece together the importance of what I was working on? A new sense of urgency gripped me. I needed to protect my work, to secure my discovery before anyone could try to take it from me. As I hurried to my car, my mind was already formulating plans. Extra security for the lab, backup copies of all my data, maybe even a consultation with a patent lawyer. As I drove home, the city lights blurring past my windows, I felt a profound sense of loneliness. I had always thought that no matter what, I could count on my family. Now, I wasn't so sure. The road ahead seemed suddenly darker, more treacherous. But beneath the hurt and the fear, a steely determination was taking root. I would prove them wrong. I would show my father, Lily, and anyone else who doubted me that my work mattered. And I would do it on my own terms, without their support or approval. As I pulled up to my small house, with its converted garage lab, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This place, cluttered and modest as it was where I would change the world. And no one, not even my own family, would stand in my way. I spent the rest of the night securing my lab, changing passwords, and making backups of all my research data. As the first light of dawn crept through my windows, I finally allowed myself to rest. But even in sleep, my dreams were filled with shadows and whispered betrayals. The carefree days of my childhood felt like a distant memory. From now on, I would have to watch my back, even among those I once trusted most. The game had changed, and I was determined to stay one step ahead. The weeks following the tense family dinner passed in a blur of feverish work and paranoia. I threw myself into my research with renewed vigor, determined to push my breakthrough to the next level. But even as I made progress, a nagging sense of unease followed me like a shadow. I found myself jumping at small noises, constantly looking over my shoulder. I installed a new security system in my lab, complete with cameras and motion sensors. Maybe I was being paranoid, but after that dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that my work was at risk. It was a crisp Saturday morning when my world came crashing down. I remember every detail with painful clarity. The smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen, the sound of birds chirping outside my window, the way the early morning light filtered through the blinds. Everything seemed so normal, so mundane. I had no idea that in a matter of minutes, my life would be turned upside down. I settled into my usual routine, booting up my computer and pulling up the files containing my latest research data. But as I scrolled through the documents, something felt off. Files were missing. Crucial data that I had meticulously recorded over the past few months had vanished. At first, I thought it must be a mistake. Maybe I had accidentally moved the files or saved them under a different name. But as I searched frantically through my computer, the horrible truth began to dawn on me. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had deliberately accessed my computer and stolen my research. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone and dialed my father's number. Part of me hoped that this was all a misunderstanding, that there was some innocent explanation. But deep down, I knew who was behind this. Alex, my father's voice came through the speaker, sounding surprised. It's early. Is everything okay? Dad, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. I need to talk to you. It's important. Can you meet me at the lab? There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm quite busy today, son. Perhaps we could dash now, Dad, I interrupted, my tone leaving no room for argument. I'll see you in an hour. The wait for my father to arrive was excruciating. I paced back and forth in my lab, my mind racing. How could this have happened? How much did they take? And most importantly, why? Why would my own family betray me like this? When I heard the sound of a car pulling up outside, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. My father walked in, his face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Alex, what's this all about?" he asked, his gaze sweeping around the lab. "You sounded upset on the phone." I cut straight to the chase. "My research files are missing, Dad. Months of work, gone. And I think you know something about it." His expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt? Defiance? It was hard to tell. "That's a serious accusation, Alex," he said, his voice maddeningly calm. "Are you sure you didn't just misplace them?" "Misplace them?" I echoed incredulously. "These aren't car keys, Dad. This is years of my life's work. And someone accessed my computer and took it. Now, I'm going to ask you once, and I want the truth. Did you have anything to do with this?" For a moment, my father just stood there, silent. Then, to my shock and horror, a small smile appeared on his face. It wasn't a warm smile or even a triumphant one. It was cold, calculated. "You always were too smart for your own good, Alex," he said, his voice taking on a tone I'd never heard before. "Yes, I took your research. But you have to understand, it's for the best." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing him admit it out loud was devastating. "For the best," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. How could stealing my work possibly be for the best? My father sighed, as if he were explaining something simple to a child. "Alex, you're brilliant. I've always known that. But you lack vision. You're so caught up in your little experiments that you can't see the bigger picture." "And what picture is that?" I demanded, my shock giving way to anger. "Opportunity, son. Your research, it's valuable. More valuable than you realize. But in your hands, it's wasted potential. You'd spend years running tests, writing papers, maybe get a patent if you're lucky. But with the right connections, the right marketing, this could be huge." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you stole my work too? What, sell it to the highest bidder?" He shook his head, looking almost disappointed. "Not sell, Alex. Leverage. Your sister, she has a gift. The kind of charisma and drive that could take this discovery and turn it into an empire. With her as the face of this breakthrough, backed by my business acumen, we could change the world. And where do I fit into this grand plan?" I asked bitterly. For the first time, my father looked uncomfortable. "You'd be compensated, of course. A share in the profits, recognition as part of the research team. It's a win-win, Alex. Your work gets the backing it needs, and you don't have to worry about all the messy business details." I felt sick. This man, my own father, had not only stolen my work but was now trying to sideline me from my own discovery. And Lily, the thought of my sister being the face of my research, taking credit for years of my sweat and tears, it was almost too much to bear. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my lab, now." My father's expression hardened. "Don't be foolish, Alex. This is happening whether you like it or not. The research is already in our possession. Lily is prepared to start speaking to potential investors next week. You can either get on board or what?" I challenged, stepping closer to him. "You'll cut me out completely? Go ahead. But know this, Dad. I will fight you every step of the way. I'll go to the police, the media, anyone who will listen. I'll tell them how Michael Chin, the great businessman, stole from his own son." For a moment, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in my father's eyes. But it was quickly replaced by a cold determination. "Think carefully about your next move, Alex. You're not the only one with something to lose here." With that thinly veiled threat hanging in the air, he turned and walked out of my lab. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, my legs no longer able to support me. The full weight of what had just happened crashed down on me like a tidal wave. My own family had betrayed me. They had stolen my work, my dreams, my future. And now they were threatening me to keep quiet. I felt a maelstrom of emotions, anger, hurt, betrayal, fear. But beneath it all, a steely determination began to take root. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I couldn't. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about right and wrong, about justice. about standing up for what you believe in, even when the odds seem insurmountable. As I sat there on the cold floor of my lab, surrounded by the remnants of my life's work, I made a decision. I would fight, not just for my research, but for everything it represented. For every late night, every failed experiment, every moment of doubt and triumph that had led me to this breakthrough. I didn't know how yet, but I would find a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. And in doing so, I would show my father, Lily, and anyone else who doubted me what I was truly capable of. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone. I had calls to make, plans to set in motion. The battle for my future had begun, and I was determined to come out on top, no matter the cost. As I dialed the first number, a grim smile played on my lips. They thought they had won, that they had outsmarted me. But they had no idea what I was capable of when pushed into a corner. The game wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. In the days following my confrontation with my father, I felt like I was living in a fog. The betrayal cut deep, leaving me reeling and unsure of my next move. But as the initial shock wore off, a fierce determination took its place. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let my research be stolen from me. It was time to fight back. My first step was to take stock of what I still had. While my father had managed to steal a significant portion of my research, he hadn't gotten everything. I had always been cautious, perhaps even a bit paranoid, and that caution was now paying off. Months ago, I had started keeping backup copies of my most important data on an encrypted external hard drive, which I kept hidden in a safety deposit box at the bank. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to prove that the research was mine. Next, I needed legal help. I reached out to Sarah Zhang, an old college friend who had gone into patent law. When I explained my situation, she was horrified but immediately ready to help. "Alex, this is serious," Sarah said, her voice grave over the phone. "But you did the right thing by calling me. We need to move fast to protect your intellectual property." Over the next few days, Sarah and I worked tirelessly to document everything. We gathered all the evidence I had of my research process, lab notebooks, early drafts of papers, even email correspondences with other scientists in the field. Sarah helped me file a provisional patent application, which would give me a year to file a full patent while establishing an early filing date. "This is just the first step," Sarah explained as we submitted the application. "We'll need to be prepared for a legal battle. Your father and sister might try to claim they had a part in the research, or that you gave them permission to use it. We need to be ready for anything." As we worked on the legal side of things, I also focused on securing my remaining research. I set up a new lab in a small, rented office space across town, moving all my equipment and materials there under cover of night. I installed a state-of-the-art security system and made sure all my data was encrypted and backed up in multiple secure locations. But even as I took these precautions, I knew that the real battle would be fought in the court of public opinion. My father was a well-respected businessman with deep connections in the community. If it came down to his word against mine, I wasn't sure who people would believe. That's when I decided to reach out to Dr. Emily Tanner, my former professor and mentor from Stanford. Dr. Tanner had always believed in me, even when my ideas seemed far-fetched. If anyone could vouch for the authenticity of my research, it was her. When I called her and explained the situation, Dr. Tanner was silent for a long moment. Then, her voice filled with a mix of anger and determination. She said, "Alex, what your father and sister have done is not just morally reprehensible, it's scientific fraud. We can't let them get away with this. I'll do whatever I can to help." With Dr. Tanner's support, I began to feel like I had a fighting chance. She agreed to review my research and provide a written statement confirming that the work was indeed mine. Her reputation in the scientific community would lend credibility to my claims. As the days turned into weeks, I threw myself into preparing for the battle ahead. I barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. Every spare moment was spent either working on my research, pushing it forward despite the setback, or building my case against my father and sister. It was during this time that I also made a difficult decision. I needed to go public with what had happened. The thought of airing my family's dirty laundry made me sick to my stomach, but I knew it was necessary. If I wanted to reclaim my work and my reputation, I needed to control the narrative. With Sarah's help, I drafted a press release detailing the theft of my research and my plans to fight back. We sent it to several science and technology publications, as well as local news outlets. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of the press release going out, my phone was ringing off the hook with reporters wanting interviews. My inbox was flooded with emails from fellow scientists offering support and sharing their own stories of intellectual property disputes. It was simultaneously heartening and overwhelming. As the story gained traction, I braced myself for my father's response. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I woke up to find a statement from him plastered across the local news websites. "We are deeply saddened by Alex's accusations," the statement read. "Our family has always supported his scientific pursuits, and we have only ever acted with his best interests at heart. We hope to resolve this misunderstanding privately and urge the media to respect our family's privacy during this difficult time." Reading his words, so carefully crafted to make him look like the reasonable party, made my blood boil. But I forced myself to stay calm. This was exactly the kind of manipulation I had expected from him. Now, more than ever, I needed to stay focused and stick to the facts. In the midst of all this, I received an unexpected call from my sister, Lily. Her voice was shaky when I answered, a far cry from her usual confident tone. "Alex," she said, I don't know what to say. Dad told me this was all above board, that you had agreed to let us use your research. I never meant for things to go this far. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that she had been manipulated by our father just as I had been. But the memory of her dismissive attitude towards my work at the family dinner was still fresh in my mind. "It's a little late for apologies, Lily," I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "You had plenty of opportunities to ask me directly about my research. Instead, you chose to go along with Dad's plan. You made your choice, and now we all have to live with the consequences." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Lily spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I understand. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Alex. I really am." As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, hurt, a tiny flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, Lily might come around and tell the truth. But I couldn't count on that. I had to be prepared to fight this battle on my own. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I split my time between working on my research, determined to push forward despite everything, and preparing for the legal battle ahead. Sarah and I met with patent officials, gathered more evidence, and strategized our approach. Dr. Tanner came through with a powerful statement supporting my claim to the research. Her words, backed by her impressive credentials, were a significant boost to our case. Other scientists I had collaborated with over the years also stepped forward, providing testimonials about my work and its originality. As the date of our first court hearing approached, I felt a mix of nervousness and determination. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal and personal challenges. But as I looked around my new lab, at the work I had managed to salvage and the new discoveries I was making, I knew that this fight was worth it. This wasn't just about one piece of research anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, about protecting the integrity of scientific discovery. It was about securing my legacy, not just as a scientist, but as someone who refused to be bullied or manipulated, even by his own family. As I made my final preparations for court, I allowed myself a small smile. My father and sister thought they had beaten me, that they could take my work and push me aside. But they had underestimated me. They had no idea of the fight they were in for. Whatever the outcome, I was ready. Ready to stand up for my work, my principles, and myself. The battle to secure my legacy had begun, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The day of the Biotech Innovation Conference arrived with a mix of anticipation and dread churning in my stomach. This annual event, held at the Moscone Center in the heart of San Francisco, was where the biggest names in biotech came to showcase their latest breakthroughs. It was also where my father and Lily had chosen to unveil their groundbreaking research, my research. I adjusted my tie nervously as I walked into the bustling conference hall. The air was thick with excitement and the low hum of conversations about the latest advancements in the field. In any other circumstance, I would have been thrilled to be here, eagerly soaking up new ideas and networking with fellow scientists. But today, I was on a mission. As I made my way through the crowd, I caught sight of my father and Lily near the main stage. They were surrounded by a group of impressed-looking executives, my father gesturing animatedly as he spoke. Lily stood by his side, smiling and nodding, looking every bit the part of the brilliant young scientist they were pretending she was. The sight made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had a plan, and I needed to stick to it. I found a seat near the back of the auditorium where I could observe without being immediately noticed. The conference kicked off with a series of presentations on various topics. I barely paid attention, my mind focused on what was to come. Finally, the moment arrived. The MC stepped up to the podium, his voice filled with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special presentation for you today. Michael Chin, the renowned entrepreneur, and his daughter Lily Chin are here to unveil a revolutionary new treatment that promises to change the face of cancer therapy. Please give them a warm welcome. The audience erupted in applause as my father and Lily took the stage. I watched, my hands clenched into fists as they began their presentation. My father started with a dramatic story about the inspiration behind their research, weaving a tale of late-night breakthroughs and eureka moments that had never happened, at least not to them. Then Lily stepped forward to explain the science behind the treatment. As she spoke, using my words, my ideas, I felt a surreal mix of pride and anger. Pride because hearing my research laid out like this, I realized just how groundbreaking it truly was. Anger because it was being presented as someone else's work. As Lily neared the end of her explanation, I knew it was time. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest, and made my way to the center aisle. "Excuse me," I said, my voice ringing out clearly in the auditorium. "I have a question." All eyes turned to me, including those of my father and Lily. I saw the moment of recognition, followed quickly by fear, flash across their faces. But it was too late for them to stop me now. "Ms. Chin," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you've presented some fascinating research here. But I'm curious, could you elaborate on the initial stages of your nanoparticle development? Specifically, how did you overcome the issue of premature degradation in the bloodstream?" Lily's face paled. This was a problem I had grappled with for months, finally solving it through a series of complex experiments. It was a key part of my breakthrough, but not something that would be immediately obvious from just reading my research notes. Lily stammered, looking desperately at our father. But he seemed just as lost. I pressed on. "And what about the targeting mechanism? The specificity you've achieved is impressive. Could you walk us through the process of how you developed and tested the ligands?" The auditorium had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching this exchange with rapt attention. Lily opened and closed her mouth, but no words came out. That's when I played my trump card. "The reason I ask," I said, my voice now carrying a hint of steel, "is because I am intimately familiar with this research. In fact, I am the one who conducted it." A murmur ran through the crowd. My father stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Alex," he said, his voice a mixture of anger and pleading, "this isn't the place for " but I cut him off. "I'm sorry, Dad, but it is. You and Lily have stolen my work, and I'm here to reclaim it." With that, I pulled out a folder from my briefcase and held it up. "I have here documentation proving that this research is mine. Lab notes, early drafts, correspondence with other scientists in the field. I also have statements from respected colleagues, including Dr. Emily Tanner from Stanford University, confirming my work on this project." The murmur in the crowd grew louder. I could see shocked and disapproving looks being directed at my father and Lily. But I wasn't done yet. "Furthermore," I continued, "I have filed a provisional patent application for this technology. I'm prepared to demonstrate, step by step, how this research was developed, including details that only the true inventor would know." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the back of the room, a voice called out, "Let him speak. Let's hear his side of the story." Suddenly, the floodgates opened. More voices joined in, calling for me to be given a chance to present my case. The organizers, looking flustered, hurriedly conferred among themselves before one of them approached me. "Mr. Chin," he said, looking nervously between me and my father, "would you be willing to present your evidence to the audience?" I nodded, my heart racing, but my resolve firm. As I made my way to the stage, I saw my father and Lily being ushered to the side by security. The look of defeat on my father's face was something I never thought I'd see. For the next hour, I presented my research to the assembled crowd of industry experts and fellow scientists. I explained every step of my process, from the initial concept to the final breakthrough. I answered questions, delving into the minutiae of the science in a way that left no doubt about my intimate knowledge of the work. As I spoke, I could see the mood in the room shifting. Skepticism gave way to interest, then to excitement as the true implications of my research became clear. By the time I finished, the applause was thunderous. In the aftermath of my presentation, everything seemed to happen in a blur. Reporters swarmed around me, asking for interviews and comments. Fellow scientists approached to offer their support and congratulations. Conference organizers apologized profusely for the mix-up, promising a full investigation into how this had happened. Through it all, I kept looking for my father and Lily, but they had disappeared in the chaos. Part of me felt a pang of regret for how public this confrontation had become, but I knew it had been necessary. The truth had to come out. As the day wound down, I found myself sitting alone in a quiet corner of the conference center, trying to process everything that had happened. That's when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked up to see Dr. Tanner standing there, a proud smile on her face. "You did it, Alex," she said softly. "You stood up for yourself and your work." I couldn't be prouder. Her words brought tears to my eyes. After everything that had happened, after all the betrayal and doubt, having someone believe in me meant more than I could express. As we sat there, talking about the events of the day and what might come next, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead would still be challenging. There would be legal battles to fight, relationships to repair or let go of, and a lot of work to do to bring my research to fruition. But for the first time in months, I felt hope. My work was recognized, my name cleared. I had faced one of the toughest challenges of my life and come out stronger on the other side. As I left the conference center that evening, stepping out into the cool San Francisco night, I took a deep breath. The city lights twinkled around me, and for a moment, I let myself feel the full magnitude of what I had accomplished. I had secured my legacy, not just as a scientist, but as someone who stood up for what was right, no matter the cost. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: this was just the beginning of my journey. And I was ready for whatever came next. The weeks following the Biotech Innovation Conference were a whirlwind of activity. My phone rang constantly with calls from journalists, fellow scientists, and even a few pharmaceutical companies interested in my research. My inbox overflowed with messages of support, collaboration offers, and interview requests. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and utterly exhausting. I found myself spending more time in coffee shops than in my lab, hunched over my laptop as I tried to respond to emails and prepare statements. The Pete's Coffee on 4th Street became my unofficial office, the baristas knowing my order by heart, a large Americano, extra shot. It was there, about a month after the conference, that I finally allowed myself to truly reflect on everything that had happened. The caffeine buzz faded into the background as I stared out the window, watching the fog roll in from the bay, shrouding the city in a soft, gray blanket. The legal proceedings were underway. My father and Lily had been served with a lawsuit for intellectual property theft, and their responses were due any day now. Sarah, my lawyer friend, had been a godsend throughout this process, guiding me through the complexities of patent law and helping me prepare for what was to come. "It's going to be a long road, Alex," she had warned me. "These cases can drag on for years. Are you sure you're ready for that?" I had nodded, feeling a mix of determination and weariness. "I have to be," I'd replied. "I've come too far to back down now." As I sat in the coffee shop, I couldn't help but think about my family. I hadn't spoken to my father or Lily since the conference. The last image I had of them was their shocked faces as I exposed their deception in front of hundreds of people. Part of me felt guilty for the public nature of the confrontation, but a larger part knew it had been necessary. The truth had to come out, and they had left me no other choice. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a text from my mom. "Saw you on the news again. So proud of you, Alex. Call me when you can." A small smile tugged at my lips. Throughout this whole ordeal, my mom had been my rock. She was heartbroken by what my father and Lily had done, but she never wavered in her support for me. Her unconditional love was a balm for my battered spirit. As I typed out a quick reply, promising to call her later, my mind wandered to the future of my research. The exposure at the conference had brought both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, I now had access to resources and collaborators I could only have dreamed of before. Several prestigious labs had reached out, offering partnerships and state-of-the-art facilities to continue my work. On the other hand, the pressure to deliver was immense. The world was watching now, expecting great things from the young scientist who had stood up to his family to protect his groundbreaking research. The weight of those expectations sometimes felt crushing. I took another sip of my coffee, grimacing at the now cold liquid. As I contemplated getting a refill, I saw a familiar face enter the coffee shop. It was Dr. Emily Tanner, my former professor and mentor. "Alex," she said warmly as she approached my table. "I thought I might find you here. Do you mind if I join you?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me, grateful for the company. Dr. Tanner had been an unwavering source of support throughout this ordeal, her testimony playing a crucial role in validating my claims. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Some days I feel on top of the world, ready to take on any challenge. Other days, I wonder if it was all worth it." Dr. Tanner nodded sympathetically. "That's understandable. You've been through a lot, Alex. It's okay to feel conflicted." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the buzz of the coffee shop washing over us. Then Dr. Tanner leaned forward, her expression serious. "Alex, I want you to know how proud I am of you," she said. "Not just for your brilliant research, but for your integrity. You stood up for what was right, even when it meant going against your own family. That takes real courage." Her words hit me hard, bringing a lump to my throat. "Thank you," I managed to say. "That means a lot coming from you." Dr. Tanner smiled, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I have something for you," she said, sliding it across the table. "It's a proposal for a joint research project between Stanford and UCSF. We want you to lead it." My eyes widened as I flipped through the proposal. It was an ambitious project, building on my nanoparticle research to develop targeted therapies for a range of diseases. The resources being offered were beyond anything I had access to before. "This is incredible," I breathed. "But why me? Surely there are more experienced researchers who could lead this." Dr. Tanner shook her head. "This is your brainchild, Alex. No one understands this technology better than you do. Plus, after everything that's happened, the universities want to make a strong statement about supporting ethical scientists. You're the perfect choice." As the implications of this opportunity sank in, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why I had fought so hard, not for recognition or accolades, but for the chance to see my work make a real difference in the world. "I'd be honored," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Dr. Tanner beamed at me. "Excellent. We'll set up a meeting next week to go over the details." As she left, I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. The future suddenly seemed brighter, full of possibilities I had never dared to imagine. But amidst the excitement, a pang of sadness hit me. I wished I could share this moment with my family, the way I used to share my accomplishments when I was younger. The rift between us seemed impossibly wide now, a chasm carved by betrayal and hurt. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. With a sense of trepidation, I answered. "Alex?" It was Lily's voice, small and uncertain. "Can we talk?" My first instinct was to hang up, to protect myself from further hurt. But something in her tone made me pause. "Okay," I said cautiously. "I'm listening." What followed was one of the most difficult conversations of my life. Lily poured out her regrets, explaining how our father had manipulated her, playing on her insecurities and ambitions. She didn't make excuses for her actions, but her remorse seemed genuine. "I know I can never undo what I did," she said, her voice breaking. "But I want you to know how sorry I am. And I'm going to make it right. I've given a statement to the lawyers, admitting to everything. It's not much, but it's a start." I sat in stunned silence, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to try and salvage some semblance of our sibling relationship. Another part remained wary, the wound still too fresh. "Thank you for telling me," I finally said. "I can't say I forgive you, not yet. But I appreciate your honesty." As I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions washing over me. The future of my family relationships remained uncertain, a complex tangle of hurt, hope, and hesitant steps towards reconciliation. I looked out the window again, watching as the fog began to lift, revealing glimpses of the city beyond. It struck me as a fitting metaphor for my journey. The path ahead was becoming clearer, even if some shadows remained. As I packed up my things to head back to the lab, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with legal battles, demanding research, and the slow process of healing fractured relationships. But I was ready to face it all. I had fought for my work, for my integrity, for my place in the scientific community. Now, it was time to move forward, to use this hard-won victory as a foundation for something greater. Stepping out onto the busy San Francisco street, I took a deep breath of the cool, salty air. The city hummed with energy around me, a constant reminder of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of my story. With renewed determination, I headed towards my lab. There was work to be done, breakthroughs to be made, and a future to shape. And I was ready for all of it.